Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. But gone will be the title that formerly graced my comic book review series, New Comics, Bitches! This will be the last time that you will hear that, because this is now called something new. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know what to call it yet. I've spent all this time thinking. I had a couple of good ideas, some that I kind of cultivated for even, maybe a day or so, and then completely fucking forgot about. But thought about calling it Comics and Curses, because just my proclivity to use some salty language, as some of you might say. But we'll get to more of that information in a bit. But for right now, here's how it's essentially going to work. We're gonna talk pretty much about everything comics and comic creator involved, whether it be obviously the comic books themselves, comic book news, comic book movies, not reviews. Obviously, I have a whole different segment for that, which you hopefully have watched. I know that some of you have, and some of you were even nice enough to comment. Thank you. And so, but I told you that I'd be back, and here I am. So obviously, like I said, we're going to start off with the news portion, and then we'll move on to what I think are the best books that came out this month, or I'm sorry, this past month, because obviously nothing's come out yet this month because it's just the beginning of August. And this was a fortunate month because we had actually 5 weeks of comics to talk about. Five Wednesdays of comics. So we'll be getting to that in a bit. I'm going to try not to make this as long as it normally is, but we'll just see how it goes. Because there's a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of comics-related news, a lot of creator-related news, a lot of new comics, and just stuff that we're going to be talking about over the course of this segment, this new vlog, which, like I said, we'll get more into that later. So let's start with the comic-related news. We're going to first talk movies and TV. Now, obviously, there was a lot of stuff that was announced at San Diego Comic-Con this year. Ow. I'm sitting on a hood, and it hurts. Anyway, that sounds weird, I know. But, I have to get a new chair because this one is wobbly because one of the fucking casters broke on it. So I used duct tape for a while about that, and I was hoping that would hold it together. But holding a 150-pound human being, not what duct tape was made for. Anyway. But we obviously know what the big news was, and frankly, I'm surprised that the internet didn't explode, that didn't break into a billion pieces, and that was, of course, now I don't know if this was if it was just a panel for Superman, or if it was a panel specifically for Man of Steel. but that Zack Snyder announced that the next Superman film that he's going to be doing will indeed co-star Batman. So that's huge, huge news. Now this, of course, this is coming. It's going to be coming out in 2015, which is another part of big comic news that we'll be talking about in a bit. But this could mean one of three things. That because okay, first of all, as we all know by now, Zack Snyder, while making two really very good films, and one pretty mediocre one, and one awful one, and one pretty good one, is not quite the visionary that that people look at him to be. If anything, this, Man of Steel and its kind of mishmash styles of like Michael Bay meets Terrence Malick, it's, except we went over that in, mine and Cast Review, and you know all about that. So, so one of three things. Zack Snyder could turn in a really solid film that will benefit greatly from having an established character, basically in DC's most popular character, I would say, mixed in here. And it could turn out to be even better than Man of Steel. That's the hope, of course. B, that it could be as good, about as good as Man of Steel. Or C, it could violently fucking suck. Because that's the way that when you try to do something this ambitious, announcing it at Comic-Con without anyone attached to what we all know is going to be the reason that we're going to be going to see this that's a big deal. Maybe a bit of a miscalculation. Obviously, they're wanting to generate as much buzz as possible for its competition. Like we said, we will talk about that shortly. But this new film, now, obviously, the rumors are circulating very quickly that Zack Snyder is going to meet with Frank Miller. Not exactly the one that I would think of, not exactly the person that I would think of meeting with as far as doing a Batman Superman film. I mean, it'll probably be, it might be called Superman Batman. It might be called World's Finest. It might be called Superman versus Batman. But it won't be called Batman versus Superman because ultimately this is still going to be a Superman film. Now, with that idea in mind, obviously the prevailing wisdom is that it will indeed be a versus type of film where Superman will have to stop Batman. He'll be called upon to combat Batman and bring him to justice. Because, Frank Miller wrote what is arguably, well, I wouldn't even say arguably, I would say the definitive Superman-Batman fight in Dark Knight Returns. So if that's the direction that they're going in, that's interesting. Obviously, they're trying to pave the way for making an eventual Justice League film. I'm still really, really uncertain on how they're going to make that work, especially with some more of the comic news they'll be talking about later. But here's the thing, is that this film this film's success will, its extended success, will largely be in part to who they cast as Bruce Wayne / Batman. Because if they're going to go with another unknown, that's, again, a potentially dangerous move. Because if they don't get someone that people are going to be interested in from the offset, Henry Cavill, was not an unknown. He had done stuff. Not much, but he had been in stuff. He had had starring roles before. But, obviously nothing to this degree. So, I mean, I know that people keep talking about Tyler Hoechlin, who is currently on Teen Wolf, the series, but the only thing that I remember him from was playing young Michael Sullivan in Sam Mendes' great Road to Perdition. And I don't know why he seems to be the name that everybody's bandying about all of a sudden, but whatever. It's almost inconsequential because it's still, we've still got probably another year before it even starts shooting. But, that's plenty, there's still plenty of time to speculate. It's kind of like how our American news, for those of you who are maybe watching or listening in other countries, covers elections, presidential elections. I mean, they've already started talking about who's going to run in 2016. And that's actually become kind of a big thing in the last week. And there's lots of time to go before that happens. So, since we've got, probably another, I would say, probably another 6 months before we get to a casting decision on who's going to play Batman. Now, it can't be, obviously, anybody who's from the established Nolan-verse of Batman. And it was very interesting because if you remember, actually, the week before Comic-Con, Christian Bale did a whole slew of, saying, I'm not doing Batman anymore. So before this announcement was even made, Christian Bale actually came out again and reiterated, because he'd already said it months ago, but it had reiterated, no, I'm not going to be Batman, again, not without Chris Nolan directing. And that was the first time that he said it, and then the second time is basically, no, I'm just not going to be Batman, ever again. So that almost feels like it was a hint, because we'd already heard him say it a while ago, and now he's saying it again more forcefully. So it should have been, some kind of clue to let us know that, yes, so the speculation, once Zack Snyder, gave this big, shocking announcement that, that, okay, there's another Batman that's going to be coming down the pipe soon. So, like I said, it's largely going to depend upon who they get to play him. Now, back in 2005 or 2004 or thereabouts, when they were talking about, Christopher Nolan rebooting Batman, or even Darren Aronofsky, who's, going to try and reboot Batman. We heard a lot about who was going to be in it. I remember thinking so clearly in my mind that there was only one person that could really do it, and that was, at the time, David Boreanaz, because of his work on Angel. Because there were certain scenes and certain sequences in Angel where it's just like, okay, that's Bruce Wayne and that's Batman. He's training. There's this training sequence where it seems like, yes, they're like pulling these from the pages of Year One, or just practicing, sparring, whatever. Now I would say, no, not David Boreanaz. He's not young enough, and I don't think he's really fit enough anymore either. So honestly, I don't know who they would think about going with for this role. I would say it would have to be someone who is moderately sized, someone who is a recognizable name, but is not a huge star. Because, as we've seen with previous Bat outings, usually when you get a good-sized star is when bad things start to happen to it. Because that's one of the geniuses of what Nolan did, is he used largely, people who were not stars. Yes, they were leading actors, but they weren't stars. So take that as you will. So that's, like I said, that's one big announcement. That was the one that kind of shook the Comic-Con to its core, despite the other announcement that came out, which was that Joss Whedon indeed was going to reveal the name of the second Avengers film. And the second Avengers film will be called Age of Ultron. Now, ironically, this will have nothing to do, thank God, with what we've just seen, and I think is even still coming out, as far as the Age of Ultron series is concerned. Basically, this will be kind of the birth of Ultron, and he's even gone so far as to say Hank Pym will not be in it. Now, that could be another one of those kind of, like the Marion Cotillard saying, "No, I'm not Talia," and then, yes, there will be a Hank Pym in that will be introduced. Because we don't know yet. I'm relatively certain that Edgar Wright's Ant-Man is supposed to come out in 2015. So, again, I don't know exactly how that's going to work. Who is going to create Ultron? Vin Diesel is apparently in talks about something to do with Avengers 2, or Avengers Age of Ultron, excuse me. We do know also now, recently, that Aaron Taylor Johnson of Kick-Ass is pretty much confirmed to play Quicksilver. That Scarlet Witch is going to be in there as well. Now, I know that, for instance, when, because Joss said when he was writing the character of Scarlet Witch, he was writing it with Saoirse Ronan in mind. Now, that would be great casting, because I love Saoirse Ronan. She is incredibly talented. She's really beautiful. Those of you who don't know her, the very least, you probably have seen Hannah, which she plays Hannah, the title character, which is a great movie. But that's someone that but was most recently in the Host, which was the intended new kind of Twilight. But of course didn't catch on because nobody cares about aliens right now. It's all about zombies and vampires and werewolves and all that shit. So, see, it gets too damn cold in here when the air's on, and of course, as soon as the air goes off, it gets too fucking hot. So, anyway. So, that one didn't, that announcement of the title and that the fact that basically the villain here is going to be Ultron didn't cause nearly as much shock waves as everybody else thought that it would. In other news, for more recent developments, in the sense that these things were going to be coming sooner than 2015. For example, I think it was yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday or the day before that Bryan Singer tweeted the first picture of a Sentinel for X-Men Days of Future Past, in which we're getting a lot of, has a really solid cast lined up already for most of the characters. I still wish they could go with someone other than Halle Berry. But that ship sailed back in 2000, so whatever. So I mean, to have a giant purple-ish Sentinel is pretty cool. So if you've seen that photo, you know what I'm talking about, and that's pretty exciting stuff. So that is, you know, I'm really looking forward to that more than I thought that I would, because you know, I mean, certain characters obviously aren't going to be returning. Certain characters are. I mean, you know, Jean Grey is not going to be in this anywhere, although I don't think she ever was. But Cyclops is definitely not going to be part of this. James Marsden confirmed that the other day when he was doing press for Two Guns. And that, of course, you know, I still feel like James Marsden and Cyclops, the characters, just got totally shafted in that series. I mean, really, really shafted. It's very, you know, I still seethe about X-Men: The Last Stand. But like I said, I think that one of the things that originally that Bryan Singer wanted to do was to kind of erase some of what he knows to be mistakes that were made in that film, which was basically the whole film. I mean, there isn't a part of that film that wasn't a mistake, in my opinion. Anyway, so then, but also more recently, that the WB announced that Arrow will be getting. Well, first of all, we've those of you who are watching that show and might have seen the new teaser on YouTube, or were lucky enough to maybe even see it at SDCC. I don't know. But know that there will be a Black Canary that will be introduced in this season. But it will not, strangely will not be Laurel. That it will be somebody else. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. Because, you know, I mean, if there's one thing that this series has taught me is that it exists to defy your expectations. Because there were some episodes of Arrow in the first season that I thought were really quite bad. And there were some episodes that I thought were really, really quite good. And I thought the finale was brilliant. I thought that was an amazing hour of television. Because it defied all the expectations that had set itself up for. So the fact that, you know, that Black Canary is going to be someone other than Katie Cassidy, playing Laurel Lance, is something pretty stunning. So we'll see how that works out. But then also, more recently, they had revealed that a recurring character on this next season will be Barry Allen. And he will indeed be the Flash. And he will indeed have powers. So we will be getting our first taste of an actual superhuman in the next season of Arrow. And that is intended to spin off into its own show. The Flash will have another television program. So instead of bringing him to the big screen, they're going to bring him to the small screen. Now, whether or not these same actors end up maybe being in this Justice League film they keep talking about, which sounds really more like a pipe dream than any other project that I can think of out there right now. Will they be bringing these actors to this film? What, you know, or even these characters? I mean, they have to bring the Flash, but, you know, obviously there's still, you know, the Project Amazon, you know, the television show Amazon that the CW has been cultivating for years and years and years, still has yet to see the light of day, and will still be in development hell probably forever. If they do end up doing a Justice League film, Wonder Woman will probably make her first appearance in that film. Despite the fact that I still think that despite the prevailing wisdom of Hollywood, people would still go to see an action movie, a superhero movie with a female lead. I know that's really feels like a stretch, but I think that audiences are in the mood for that. I think they would go see that. They may not turn out in droves it may not make, Avatar money, but it will probably make a pretty good amount of money if you get the right person to do it, like they had back in 2006 or 2007 when they had Joss Whedon writing and directing Wonder Woman. That just seemed like something that was really in his wheelhouse, but didn't happen. So, so I thought, all of these things very interesting. From from the comic book realm. Just back to TV shortly now. Of course, it's been a long time since I've done this in regards to talking about comic books and comic book related stuff. But the one show that I'd want to talk to you about briefly is CBS's Under the Dome. Now, the reason that I'm talking about this here is because this whole show was developed by Brian K. Vaughan. Now, this so far has been a really good show. It has not been a great show. Now, Brian K. Vaughan in some of the episodes, a couple of episodes of Lost that he did, I remember being quite excellent. And obviously, we've read series from Brian K. Vaughan. We've read a lot of his comics. And for whatever reason, this just doesn't feel like Brian K. Vaughan yet. It doesn't have the humor. It doesn't have the heart yet. It has generated a good deal of suspense. It still feels very Stephen King-ish, which may more than anything be also a tribute to how well Vaughan has been trying to keep the spirit of the novel intact. Now, this is a 13-episode first season, and we did just recently learn that it will be picked up for a second season. Now, how they intend to expand this story